Hello, church, and hello, community. It's good to be back with you on this Tuesday Encouraging Word. If you were on the same Bible reading plan as we are at Calvary, then you were reading in Deuteronomy this morning, or maybe you're getting ready to read in Deuteronomy this evening. But I wanted to share a section out of that reading portion for today, Deuteronomy 17, verses 18 through 20. Moses here, of course, is receiving the word of the Lord from the Lord himself, and he's giving it to the people, but he's speaking specifically to a future king or the future kings of Israel. This is an instruction for the king, so instructions for leadership. Listen to these words from God's word. Now it shall come about when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself a copy of this law on a scroll in the presence of the Levitical priest. It shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God by carefully observing all the words of this law and these statutes, so that his heart may not be lifted up above his countrymen, and that he may not turn aside from the commandment to the right or to the left, so that he and his sons may continue long in his kingdom in the midst of Israel. What is so interesting about this, and this doesn't only apply to the future king of Israel, but really to anybody who's in a position of leadership, anybody who's in a position of teaching and proclaiming God's word. What's so interesting is that it doesn't say, make sure that the people know God's word, though that is the responsibility of godly leadership, but it says, make sure that you have a copy of God's word. In this case, the king was to commission a scroll that would have had the first 5 books of Moses that he was responsible to spend time in, to read and to study, and not only to know God's word for himself, but also that he may learn to fear the Lord his God by carefully observing all these words. And so that it wasn't enough that the king had a copy of God's word, read God's word, and knew God's word. All those things, yes, were necessary, but he also was called to carefully observe God's word. Why? Because that was going to make an incredible impact on the people of God. It's one thing to share God's word with somebody else. It's something else when people see you living it out. And I think we're all aware of that, but this just really drives that home, how important it is for the leadership to be modeling God's word, not just teaching it. There's many gifted teachers of God's word out there, and what a fantastic gift it is to have that. But even more importantly, are you living out God's word? Are you modeling that for your people? And listen to what it says that will happen to the king if he does this, if he follows God's law and his statutes. It says that his heart will not be lifted up above his countrymen. This is a reminder that you may be in a position of authority, but in the eyes of God, everybody is the same. The rich, the poor, the king, the subjects, the leadership, the congregation, we're all going to be judged the same. We're all going to stand before God and give an account for how we lived our lives. Nobody's going to be judged with any kind of favoritism or speciality. We're all going to stand before God. And this way, the king is reminded that he needs to walk carefully and circumspectly, that his heart may not be lifted up, because he's going to be judged by the same standard. So he needs to know the word, he needs to live the word out. And you know what? That's going to impact not only the people that he's leading, it's going to impact future generations, so that his sons may continue long in his kingdom in the midst of Israel. How you're living your life now. And everybody's leading somebody. The example you're setting, if you're following God's word, how you're living your life now is not only impacting this generation, it's impacting future generations. And so just a very sobering thought for all of us. We need to carefully study God's word, know God's word, love God's word, but also live God's word, not just be hearers, but be doers. That's basic. I think we're all aware of that, but it's a good reminder to each of us, a good reminder to myself. Hope that encourages you today, and I hope you have a great week. God bless.